like a raccoon. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the May 2nd edition of the Committee of the Whole for Cochrane Council. It is 5:30 p.m. and I'm going to call the meeting to order. Just to take note, Councillor Susan Flowers is not here tonight. She's not feeling well, so she's going to be absent. With that, I'm going to ask for a motion to accept the agenda as presented. Councillor Reid?
I'll move the adoption of the agenda as presented.
All in favor? That is voted in unanimously. The adoption of the minutes is next, and Councillor Flowers is normally one to do this, so we have to have a fill-in. Anybody willing to do that? Oh, there. Sorry, I didn't even look at your side.
I would be happy to make that motion in Councillor Flowers' absence.
Perfect. All in favor? And that's voted in unanimously. First of all, we are going to get ready for our delegations, and we have a few delegations this evening, and our first one up tonight is the Cochrane Area Humane Society. So I am going to call Ms. Janine Rossier, Executive Director, and Jimmy Anton, Operations Manager from the Cochrane Area Humane Society, to the podium to begin their presentation. Welcome, Jamie.
Thank you. Janine is on her way. She's stuck in traffic, so she may jump in as well in a moment when she arrives. So hello, my name is Jamie Anton. I'm the Operations Manager at the Cochrane Area Humane Society. Thank you so much for having us tonight. We just thought we'd do a little bit of a year in review for everybody here as we go through. So some of you probably are familiar with what we do or have been into our facility to either adopt or take part in a community event or an educational seminar event, but essentially our mission is leading and educating communities in animal welfare by providing pets in need with shelter, rehabilitation, training, and opportunity, and supporting people in responsible pet care. So essentially our biggest part is saving and changing lives. So again, we've had a busy year. We take in dogs, cats, small animals. We've been able to maintain our shelter operations, although things have looked a little bit different over these last couple of years. We're happy now to say that this year we have reopened our doors with the provincial changes, and we're able to now start getting back into offering a lot of our usual services. So obviously throughout the pandemic, we still required, because we were essential service, we still required care for all of our animals, and we were fortunate that we were able to do that through with safety measures with our volunteers and our staff being able to offset each other and being able to still work safely and get the work done that needed to be done. So again, we do a lot of different things. We're very fortunate that we have a really strong hospital and rehabilitation program. So again, we're able to care for many animals at a time. We have a foster program as well. So these are some of our residents over this last year. And you can see sort of before and after pictures. On the right is Cutie Pie, and she was actually just adopted not that long ago. And so again, we're seeing a lot of severe medical come in, and we are able to rehabilitate them in that way. So in terms of statistics, in 2021, we had a total of 1,737 animals that we cared for. We adopted out 1,424. We had 51 who were claimed by their owners, and then we had 40 that had to be euthanized due to health and behavior. Because we are an open door shelter to our service area, we do take anything in terms of health or behavior, and obviously our goal is to get all of our adoptable animals adopted out. Some of our programs and services that we offer, and we're really excited that we're able to get back into offering a lot of these programs again, is we offer sheltering. So obviously anything that needs that place to stay and that sheltering we're able to do. We also are providing lost and found services for our service area, which includes the town of Cochrane as well. And then of course adoption. So I don't know if any of you have adopted from us, but that's also one of our big services that we're known for. We also have a really strong health and behavior rehabilitation program. So as I mentioned, we do have a lot of severe health issues that come in, and we're very fortunate that we do have a clinic in the or a hospital in the clinic with a vet and an animal health tech, so they can do a lot on the health side. And then we also have a really strong behavior team that's able to work with a lot of our animals, particularly our dogs, and get them through to where they are adoptable. Obviously with COVID, we've also seen some of those challenges and some of the behaviors with some of our dogs and things like that that haven't been socialized as much as they normally would have. So some of those guys are taking a little bit longer to work through the shelter with some of our behavior work that we've been doing. We also offer public dog training and consultations. So again, that's a service that we're able to provide to the community, but it also works well for us because it's something that generates income for us. We also do private consultation, again, and that's in conjunction with our behavior team as well. And we also do safekeeping and emergency boarding. So again, that's working with different groups in terms of RCMP or FCSS. We get referrals through that. Our safekeeping program is for anybody that's fleeing domestic violence and isn't able to take their pet with them at the time. They come to us and we look after them until they've arranged safe housing, in which case from there, the animal is returned to them. And our emergency boarding runs very similarly, where again, it could be someone experiencing a housing crisis due to maybe a fire or a flood or something that's prevented them from being able to stay in their home or able to keep their pet for a period of time. So we're able to help them out with care at the shelter in one of our foster homes until they're able to kind of get back up on their feet. And sometimes that also applies to people that maybe have to go into care or hospital and don't have a friend or a family member that's able to look after those pets. We also run a community pet food bank as well, so that's for the town of Cochrane, and we have seen an increased use in that over the last couple of years. So we service the community that way. Anybody that's accessing the town of Cochrane Food Bank run by the Active Vets also picks up, if they have a pet, they can pick up a little chit and come over and see us for dog or cat food, because our goal is to build some of those relationships, and being able to keep pets in their home is our goal. So if we can offset that with some food and a little bit of help or support in any way we can, we're more than happy to do that. We also run a rural rescue and support program. And that typically we work with a couple different other rescues as well that work in rural areas. And we also have our Morley Preventative Program that runs from there. And this year we're really excited about our Morley Preventative Program because we are now able to do the spay and neuters in-house at our shelter clinic, which is great. Before they would be coming to us every Thursday. We have a group of volunteers that goes out. They provide a food bank service out there, as well as we pick up any pets that need to be surrendered or any pets that are part of our Morley Preventative Program. Anybody that needs their pet spay or neutered, they come back with us for the week. They spend the week with us. We're able to provide spay neuter surgery, vaccines, parasite treatment, and from there they're returned that following Thursday to the owner, and it helps us build that relationship in that community as well. And we've been working with the Morley community for over 20 years now. And then we also offer public grooming and a dog wash as well. So if anybody has a dog that they would like groomed, we have a couple of fantastic groomers that do that, and a public dog wash that's open as well. I'll let you take it.
And I'll just recap that with offering a lot of those programs and other much needed and access programs is made possible in great part to the generosity of the town's operating grant. So thank you. So our organization does rely heavily on income generated through our self-help initiatives, and that's to support our operation and maintain critical programs for our community members and our pets. And in our fundraising efforts in 2021, we focused primarily on direct donor support, granting opportunities, third-party fundraising, and the slow comeback of some of our traditional events. Our donors stayed extremely committed and generous throughout the pandemic to help sustain our operation. We had donors support in a number of extraordinary surgeries. It was really a year of broken bones and torn knees. Saw a ton of those in our dogs, unfortunately. And donors who provided generous capital funds so we could purchase life-saving hospital equipment. Many kind individuals and local businesses also hosted a diversity of fundraising initiatives on our behalf, and it was an honor to be chosen as a benefactor of their generosity and be recognized for the work that we do in the community. We too were able to increase the number of traditional events we were able to host, which was fantastic. We held a successful spring bake sale and a summer book sale, and we were elated to be able to host a traditional gala in November, albeit in masks and part of the REP. It was a bit of a nail biter, needing to decide so late in the year if we were going to be able to hold an in-person event with all the changes and restrictions and the anticipated new wave, but it was definitely worth the bare nails. Our Wags and Whiskers Gala fundraiser was an incredible success, raising $47,000 for the organization, which are really critical funds that were missed in 2020 when we weren't able to hold that gala. And being able to just share in an in-person event again was so wonderful, and the evening was enjoyed with 165 of guests and supporters, so it was really great. Having an opportunity to apply for grants is so important for our day-to-day operation. Important as well is being supported by some of the most dedicated and committed volunteer base that we have the privilege of working with. These folks have stood beside us and helped keep our doors open and the animals cared for throughout the challenges of the pandemic these last crazy 2 years. They've been amazing in all aspects of our operation, from animal care to bunny and cat socializing, walking dogs, doing the heaps and heaps of laundry that pile up every single day, and all the behind the scenes vital duties, fundraising and events help. Plus, our foster homes really held us above water, caring for hundreds of animals in their homes while we were bursting at the seams at the shelter. Our whole volunteer base is definitely family, and that saying really is correct, that it takes a village. They are truly part of saving lives and changing lives. And so it meant so much to us to be able to recognize these incredible people with our annual volunteer recognition event last fall. And so thank you to the town of Cochrane for the community grant for making that event possible and for us being able to recognize our amazing volunteers. At the present time, our doors have reopened to casual visits. Just a couple months ago, our adoptions are back to walk-in style, with some animals remaining by appointment. We're back to hosting things like kids' birthday parties. In-person seminars are taking place, and we continually aim to offer community programs and services to support them through this pandemic. Be that, like Jamie mentioned, donations of pet food for those struggling financially through our long-standing partnership with the Cochrane Activettes, or training classes and consultations focusing on common and complex behaviors as a direct result of COVID-19. And we will continue to partner with individuals and supporters, businesses on third-party fundraising initiatives, such as the annual Hair of the Dog fundraiser, which is coming up June 11th, not too far away, and some of our other seminars that we're offering to the community, as well as maintaining really strong donor relations to be able to help people and care for the animals that are seeking second and sometimes third and fourth opportunities. So we do wish to express our thanks to all of you once again, certainly for being by our side. The town of Cochrane has been so supportive and has truly been there, being a part of us and helping save and change lives. So thank you to all of you, and we wish you continued health and wellness. And my deepest apologies for zipping in the middle of the presentation.
Thank you so much to both of you. I know there's a couple of us up here that have adopted animals already. I probably don't need any more myself, but it's probably a definite push out to my colleagues. Yeah, the mayor is also one, to adopt and make sure that we bring home animals to our own base. You guys also haven't been before us for a while now, so welcome back. It feels good to have you guys back and give us a quick update. So I'm going to, first of all, turn over the questions to my colleagues. Councillor Reid.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for your presentation. It's great to see you back again. And I thought you might have a report on the mayor's dog or something like that, but we'll leave that for another meeting. I had a couple questions, and obviously my interests are on the finance side. Can you remind me what your annual operating budget is?
It has grown to, it's between $1.7 and $1.8 million.
And what percentage or how much does the town provide in the way of a grant?
In the way of grants, it was $20,000 for operating grants and $1,500 for our community grant to be able to support our volunteers through that recognition event.
So does most of your funding then come through fundraising?
Fundraising, direct donor support, yep, and our self-help initiatives through our programs and services, so adoption fees that are collected through our canine training classes, the fees that are collected through those, the vast majority, over 95% is really self-help initiatives. So our fundraisers, the third-party fundraisers, just a very small percentage, almost less, about 3% comes through granting opportunities.
Yeah, I have the privilege of running a nonprofit in the city, and maybe the comparison isn't fair, but I'm often asked, for every dollar that's donated, what percentage of that actually goes to programming or services? Do you happen to know what that might be?
Not off the top of my head, but I can get back to you on that and let you know directly what that percentage is.
Okay, I have one more question if I could. I was kind of interested about the implications of the pandemic as it related to your funding. Has it hurt or helped during your fundraising?
We are so privileged to have an amazing community around us. Where we really struggled in the first year and into the second year, because we were not able to do so much of our self-help initiatives, pretty much all of in the first year, our traditional fundraisers fell by the wayside. We weren't able to do anything in person. We really relied on third-party fundraising, other kind people doing that fundraising for us, and however they could. We attempted, and we did a few online fundraisers, but our donors really stepped up, and we continually sought out grants that might be able to support us through COVID. We also made use of or engaged in the wage subsidy program that helped a little bit as well. But our donors and this community really kept us above water. And so we were able to get through that first extremely critical year and got through successfully. Last year, as things started opening up, as soon as restrictions relaxed, we'd add one more program in, and we were always tweaking because we knew folks were having challenges with the pandemic, whether that was trying to socialize their puppies when your puppy couldn't go meet, 100 people and dogs in the first 100 days of their life. It was such a struggle. Tweaking our programs to offer training classes or consults geared to those challenges, we were trying to be on top of that and proactive right away. Right. So anytime we were able to offer a program back in or additional programs, we were quick on it. We did not have to cease with adoptions. We had to do them differently and by appointment. That changed, but luckily adoptions throughout the pandemic continued to go strong. So that was a service we were able to provide the entire time. And then we moved to online training classes, online consults, so that continuation of support to the community didn't cease.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and just a shout out to all of your volunteers. Anybody who has driving along Griffin Road will definitely see your volunteers. So
fantastic. Yeah.
Thank you for all you do.
Councillor McFadden.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Reid kind of asked my finance questions. Your budget at 1.7 to 1.8 million, and I just wanted to extend my congratulations and thanks for all the work that you do. With my first pet adoption through your organization, it was still that broken down Atco trailer on that vacant, dusty lot, and just how the organization has grown and fills such a gap for the community. I think the organization has a lot to be proud of, not only how you've grown and also how you handled the COVID pandemic. So, congratulations to your organization, and I know volunteers are a huge part of everything you do, so a huge hats off to them as well. And so we've currently, we have one pet currently that came through the Humane Society, and one at a time is the rule I've told the children. So, but thank you for all the work that you do. And I know fundraising for nonprofits, it's a real challenge, and you're having to get unique, and you guys often have really unique ones. Can you just remind me of the date of your next fundraiser?
So the next, our CHS hosted fundraiser, our own hosted fundraiser, or someone doing something for us? There is a third-party fundraiser coming up on June 11th. That's the Hair of the Dog. Right. That is put on by local businesses in support of us. Our biggest fundraiser of the year, providing restrictions don't, or nothing happens in that way, it'll be our gala in November again. That'll be November, I think it's on a Friday this year. I believe it's the 6th, but I have to quickly look at the calendar. That'll be in November. Yeah, there will be a book sale in between and some small things. We have some renovations going on at the shelter right now. So we've been pushing back some of our on-site fundraisers back a little bit. They might be closer to the end of the spring, beginning of the summer. But our bake sales and book sales and things like that, as soon as we get some of this painting and flooring renovations done, that take weeks and weeks and sometimes months. Yeah, those will be happening again too.
Yeah, and it's great to hear that you're back in. I cannot schedule far enough out to November, so I'll keep it in mind. I was thinking more of the June one. The last question though, is your dog wash, is that back open?
It sure is.
Okay,
Yeah.
excellent.
Yeah, and it's been great through COVID as well because it's self-contained. You enter from, you don't have to come through the shelter. The public access it from our back parking lot. You're in the room all by yourself. You can lock the door. It's got a disinfection tool. So it's been really great for throughout COVID as well because social distancing has just automatically happened because you have a private space to yourself to wash your dog.
Perfect.
Dogs.
Excellent. Well, ladies, thank you so much for your presentation and your update, and please extend our thanks to your whole crowd. You provide invaluable services, and our pets are part of our family, so thank you.
Thank you very much, and I just will reiterate, it really truly takes a village, and we're so fortunate to be part of this fabulous community that gives back so much and really supports local charities here in this town, and thank you to all of you again for your support.
Before you step away, I have a couple questions. I'm not sure if you actually mentioned, but you guys are still supporting Airdrie, right? What is that split still with the Airdrie crowd versus the Cochrane crowd?
Mm-hmm. So last year, in terms of intakes, we supported 162 animals coming in from the town of Cochrane. Airdrie has dwindled down because they do have their own pound services now. So we saw less than 50. I think 46 animals came in. And the majority of those are owner surrenders, certainly.
And then one more quick question, I guess. I know that fundraisers obviously impacted you guys during COVID. You know, volunteers, I'm not sure how much they were impacted. Were there a number of animals returned, you know, kind of during the pandemic? Just because people initially are like, let me get an animal, but then all of a sudden you realize all that's required to look after an animal. Were there a lot returned during that period?
We actually are seeing the same number of returns that we have in years past. I hope that is due to us trying to be as proactive as possible. We knew as adoptions were, you know, flying out the door and people had that time at home, we structured our screening process a little bit differently. Have you thought about what it's going to be like when you go back to work? Have you thought about some of the behavior challenges you might be facing? Have you thought about if you don't go back to work at all, and you know, your financial situation? So just having a really honest but positive conversation with people prior to adopting, and then letting them know that we are there for support through any challenges you might be facing. We created all those puppy and dog training classes that had the COVID tweak and really looking at it, because we knew, and we're still seeing it in terms of owner surrenders, not in an increase, but so many of the dogs are coming in with fear issues and reactivity issues. And so knowing that that was going to happen, having trainers on site to be able to help with those kind of complex behaviors, and just really trying to be proactive how we could. Certainly animals are still coming back, but not in a number that isn't unlike other years. What we're just seeing is an increase overall in dogs in particular with behavior concerns, not necessarily adoptees coming back, just in general, owner surrenders with dogs. Fear and reactivity is a big one, and they just increase our length of stay at the shelter. So it takes that much more time for our behavior staff to put in that behavior modification work before they're going to be ready for place for adoption. And then it takes longer for them to be adopted too. It takes a very committed family to continue on in that journey with them. And so their length of stay with us, you know, goes up quite high. Yeah.
Well, that's good to hear. At least it wasn't an abnormal number or anything like that. I know that you guys are not asking anything and we cannot vote on anything in this meeting, but I'm wondering, is there any way that we as council could support you in any way going forward that has not been mentioned today, other than kind of our continuing cheerleading and things like that?
The cheerleading is certainly very much appreciated. Coming out to some of our events, maybe a different way of supporting us, and the events are a lot of fun, whether it's third party or whether it's our gala. I think they're a really good time. If you want to become a personal donor, if you believe in the work we do and are invested in what we bring to the community, you know, becoming a donor or becoming someone that's a monthly donor or a one-time donor, come chat with me anytime. We would love to see how we can work together or partner together on something.
Perfect. I've been to the Hair of the Dog before, and it gets its name truly from Hair of the Dog.
It's a really fun event.
Yeah, it is. I just wanted to give a shout out again, kind of like my colleague said, to your volunteers, to your board, to your funders, to everybody that supports you. Continue to go on and support our local animal community, and I'll encourage everybody to adopt locally as much as I can. So thank you, ladies.
Thank you very much.
Next, I'd like to bring up our next delegation, which is 4B, the Cochrane District Youth Justice Committee. I'm going to call Ms. Kathy Berquist, Chair of the Cochrane District Youth Justice Committee, to the podium to begin her presentation and tell us all the good things that you have in store for us.
Deputy Mayor Federico and Council, thank you so much for this opportunity to speak to you. It's been actually a few years, quite a few years, since we've come to you and actually talked about the work of our committee and given a report. But we are the Cochrane and District Youth Justice Committee. I wanted to give you a little bit of history of who we are, how we came into being. So in 1984, there was a federal act that changed, and it was an act that dealt with young offenders. At that time, it was the Juvenile Delinquent Act. If you can imagine a name like that, we would never call someone a juvenile delinquent, but that was the act that was replaced in 1984 with the Young Offender Act, and then subsequently updated again in early 2000s to the Youth Criminal Justice Act, with some changes made to that. So the main difference that this act did in 1984 was change the way that youth were dealt with an understanding of youth, the brain development, and how a youth matures and grows. So it put into place a community-based system of justice for youth that allowed for groups of people to come together in communities to give consequences to youth. So out of this, our committee came into being. This, it's called an extrajudicial process. So it is legally binding, but it's outside of the court. This extrajudicial process gives the opportunity to actually complete consequences and for youth to avoid going through court with the possibility of being found guilty and receiving a youth criminal record. The provincial justice ministers were given the responsibility of implementing these youth justice committees. And in fact, Alberta jumped on board very early. And even at this date today, Alberta still has more youth justice committees than every other province and territory combined. We're a province that strongly believes in restorative justice. So in 1996, a steering committee was formed in Cochrane that was really, the initiative was the Cochrane detachment of the RCMP and probation that drove that initiative to form a steering committee. And actually, I was a school trustee at the time and came on board. I had kids in the school system and was very eager to see something like this in place. So I actually chaired the steering committee. We had a number of steps that we had to go through to complete before we could apply for designation to the provincial government. And so here we are. Today, 1996 is when we received our designation from the Justice Minister the day, who was Brian Evans, who was actually from this constituency. We had a formal meeting with the town officials, the various officials in our jurisdiction, and Brian Evans came and presented us with our designation certificate. So we were formally designated as a Cochrane District Youth Justice Committee, went through a series of training. We are all volunteers. From our beginning up till today, we are a volunteer committee. And so we have faced the challenges over the years of volunteers, managing volunteers. But we've been very successful, very committed, and believe very much in what we do. Our jurisdiction is the same as the Cochrane detachment of the RCMP, with the exception of the First Nations reserves. So we cover quite a great area, and we try to draw volunteers from our entire jurisdiction because we get youth from every area, and we want them to face community members in their own area. Our files come from the Crown or from the judge, or direct referrals from the RCMP. And that was really starting to gear up, and then COVID hit, and everything shut down, all the watch trainings in the RCMP. So we're just trying to get that going again, where we actually will receive a pre-charge referral from the RCMP. We just encourage them, instead of giving a warning to a youth, refer them to us, because we'll nip it in the bud, not let them think they've gotten away with anything. And there's nothing that's more effective than facing a committee of people that are going to hold you accountable for your actions. We continually receive training. And our committee actually has co-hosted with the Young Offender Branch from Edmonton, co-hosted provincial conferences up until there was no longer funding for them several years ago. But we've been very active in our training, and we still do our own in-house training where we invite other rural youth justice committees to join us and receive the training with us. So our mandate, and really this is drawn from the federal legislation, is to hold youth accountable for their wrongdoing. In order to participate in the program, they have to accept responsibility for their actions and agree to participate. That's the first question we ask them. Do you accept responsibility? We are not a court. We don't deal with guilt, innocence. Do you accept responsibility, and do you agree to participate? The youth have the opportunity to repair the harm that has been done through the completion of consequences. This is the whole foundation of restorative justice. It is all about accountability, repairing the harm, and putting that into place and drawing into the process everybody, parents, guardians, as well as the victim, into the process to participate. Everybody has a voice in that. Everybody's been impacted. Of course, it's not always appropriate, nor does a victim always want to participate, but we will give them a voice and represent them, and make sure that that youth understands that a real person has been impacted. Our committee also participates in activities and events to educate youth with the goal to reduce crime. So we've been very fortunate to have been invited to speak at some comm classes when they're dealing with the Youth Criminal Justice Act, and talk about what our committee does. And it always generates a lot of interest with the class. So who are the youth that are encountering the law? These are youth between the ages of 12 through 17. So even if we see them after their 18th birthday, because it can take many months for the file to come through the system to finally come through probation to us. And so a youth may have turned 18, but it's at the date that the offense was committed. has to be before their 18th birthday, from all family compositions and socioeconomic statuses, all levels of academic aptitude. We've had youth that have dropped out of school. We've had youth that are at the level of being chosen for valedictorian. Athletes, artists, video game enthusiasts, youth with and without part-time jobs, the full spectrum, and from all walks of life. There are risk factors that increase the likelihood of criminal acts with youth. And we're seeing more, unfortunately, more of these risk factors. There's addictions, there's mental health issues, there's absentee parents. Has a huge impact on a youth's life. But all youth can make mistakes, even serious ones. And extrajudicial sanctions and extrajudicial measures, which is what we administer, is an opportunity to make amends. So the types of eligible offenses, and these are all under the Criminal Code of Canada. I'm not going to go through them all. You can see the list up on the wall there, but you can see there's a whole spectrum of crime in there that youth can commit. We do not deal with violent crime. So any youth that is involved in violent crime is going to go through the court system. But even the theft under 5,000, actually in recent years, we've seen theft far above 5,000. So really, it's up to the discretion of the Crown prosecutor or the judge to determine whether a youth would benefit from coming through our committee rather than going through the court. And so they have a lot of leeway in there. And even recently, we've seen different types of assault. We've had assault with a weapon. Actually, we've had various assaults with a weapon, but the weapons being, for example, a car door, where someone's, a youth riding by a car with other youth that don't like them, and they open the door and knock them off their bike. So we see a label of an offense, but there's a big, broad spectrum there of the seriousness of an offense. We're seeing more of the types of threats that are verbal or threats that are on electronic devices, unfortunately. But yes, it's a big range here. So examples of conditions. A youth, we generally will not give a youth less than 3 conditions or consequences. And the contract that we sign, which is a legal contract, gives us a lot of leeway in that on the types of conditions that we would put in, and we get very creative. So, as I said before, this is a restorative process. So the youth is involved in this, the parents, if there's a victim there, in having a say, plus our 3 committee members that are meeting with that youth, in what kinds of conditions should be put into place, what would best deal with the harm that's been caused, what's going to help this youth get onto a path where they're going to make better choices, or maybe deal with an addiction they have, or a mental health issue, or which is going to involve some sort of counseling. So we've got a very short list here, but I just want to say that we become very, very creative, and we have wonderful access through the Calgary Youth Attendance Center to some programs that are free. There's a great program for girls, Young Women of Power. It's a 6-week program that we can put girls into. And I'll say one of the real benefits that's happened in the past couple of years through COVID is that things have gone online that were not previously. They had to attend in person. And going to the east end of Calgary for a parent to get home from work and get their youth there was difficult. So it's given a lot of options here for youth. But there's various programs that will give them skills in building relationships, being responsible, making good choices that we can access. And so we take advantage of many of these that have been of tremendous help. And we send youth to community service. And again, because of the mandates that have been in place in the past couple of years, we have not been able to do that. But things are opening up again, so we will. And in fact, I was very interested with the Humane Society presentation because we've appreciated the support they've given through the years to be able to send youth to them. So it's nonprofit agencies that we can send youth to for community service work. And our youth benefit tremendously. They come back, they have discovered they have skills they didn't know they had. They've been around adults that have affirmed them and encouraged them, and some of these kids have never had that. And they come back feeling that they have some value and that they can contribute something. So community service is a powerful tool to use in these youth's lives. So everything is written into a legally binding formal agreement that the youth signs, our team leader signs, and then they come back at the end of their time, usually about 2 months, with everything completed. And it's a different youth that we see, a youth that has grown and learned, made some changes, parents that generally say, boy, this is the best thing that ever happened to our family. We're just so grateful for the changes, for the growth in our son or daughter and in our family. So our successes. And for me personally, this is my 26th year volunteering on this committee. And I'm still passionate about what I do to see these lives change. Since 1996, we have met with over 500 youths, with their parents, guardians, and with many, many victims. There's a very high rate of the youth not reoffending. I mean, that is our goal, to see youth that are putting changes into their lives that are putting them in a new direction. And that has been the case. Lives of youth and their families have been positively impacted through our Youth Justice Committee. So it might be a youth that has offended, but it is the entire family that is impacted. And of course, a victim, if a victim will participate, and we've seen so many powerful encounters with the youth and a victim. So we believe that through the work of our committee, that the communities that we serve continue to be strengthened through this restorative justice process. When you have youth that are learning how to be contributing members of society, when you have families that are being strengthened, it strengthens the entire community. So thank you so much for your time. I do want to invite you all on the council to I didn't even think to be putting it up there, but I wanted to, I've got actually invitations to our 25.5 year. We couldn't celebrate in October, so we're celebrating now our 25th anniversary of serving our communities. It's going to be at the Frank Wills Hall. I'm going to give you a hard copy. It's short notice. It's Saturday, May the 14th, 2:30 to 5. We would be so honored if you would attend and celebrate with us. And I would be happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you, Ms. Burkess, for the information. It is something that we tossed around the background that, we haven't heard a lot about your organization, so we're happy to hear about it and obviously support keeping our youth on the right path and out of trouble. So I'm going to open it up to my colleagues. Councillor Reid?
Yeah, well, 26 years, you're a volunteer extraordinaire. That's really commendable, and that is the work of your group. Thank you for all that you do in terms of our community and in particular for our youth. Please pass that along to your colleagues. I'll be the first to admit I won't be able to be there on the 14th. I am taking care of some youth, but they're my grandchildren.
Wonderful.
Your success rate is really impressive. I was really surprised, having read that. I didn't think 85% that you would get anywhere near that. You know, I thought it'd be closer to 50, so that's really commendable. I guess the question I have is, over the last 25 years, with 500 people, you're averaging about 20 youth a year. Is that gone up or down over the course of the most recent years?
It's gone down.
Oh, excellent.
Youth crime has been on the decline, and you know, there's we have conversations sometimes with the RCMP or with the Crown Prosecutor about this. The largest caseload we had in a year was 60, if you can believe it. Like, this was, and we only meet on Tuesday nights is when we do our cases, Tuesday nights. And so we were exceedingly busy that month, and we had a large committee. But, you know, in recent years, even within, you know, we've been down to actually 3 cases in 1 year. And in our conversations with law enforcement, sometimes it's not adequate staffing that they have, that they can actually give attention, because it requires paperwork on their part to make a referral. And so there's more serious issues for them to be dealing with, and they will admit that. And then also some of the crime that youth were committing, it was more serious crime, so they weren't coming to us. So serve those 2 factors.
Okay, great. Again, thank you in particular for your volunteerism. I can't think of anybody I know who's devoted 26 years to volunteering for a group, so thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor McFadden?
Yes, I did want to also extend my thanks for all the work you do, and just your explanation there. I mean, it's great to hear that youth crime is dropping. Hopefully that's what the stats are actually saying. But I mean, the amount of work that your group has put on is quite phenomenal, and it's great to have you here and sharing your story again, because it has been a long time. I did want to ask just 3 questions, really. One is, you know, where are you getting your funding from? And then how many volunteers you actually have? And then how many volunteer hours are you putting in as a group?
Well, our funding, and it's too bad that Councillor Susan Flowers isn't here, because at the time that our committee came into being, she was on the FCSS, which she was there for many years. When we first began, and because we are volunteers, we don't have any salaries, but we do have expenses. Everything was out of our own pockets. And then FCSS stepped up 1 year, and we received funding from them to attend a provincial volunteer event. And then probably about 18 years ago or so, the provincial government began to give us youth justice committees some funding. And so we were able to, in fact, the amount of funding that we received this year, which we've received for the past several years actually, is $5,700. So that covers mileage. We've got one of our members in West Bright Creek, one in Springbank, and so coming to meetings or attending to different youth intakes or whatever. Through COVID, actually, we saved a lot of money, but then we spent money on, of course, we had to get the professional Zoom. So we had other kinds of expenses. And so, and our training, our in-house training events, to be able to get some really excellent people and pay for, give an honorarium to really excellent people that come and train. And volunteer recognition. One thing that I have realized over the years that's very, very important is, even a volunteer committee, we have to spend money on volunteer recognition. Oh, and also on volunteer management training. And so we have done that, and that is what our funding money is for. So your other question, number of members. We currently have, we're losing one member actually, that's my co-chair. who is moving into Calgary. So we will be down to 5 members, the lowest we've actually ever been in our committee. But we do have 3 other interested people. So we have reached out to, they reached out to us, and they will probably start coming to our committee meetings in the fall and seeing if what we do is something that they would like to do. So, and your last question, what was it?
Oh, it was just more around your volunteers, number of volunteer hours.
Oh yeah, volunteer hours. Well, you know, that's an interesting question, and it's actually something we have never recorded, because we're not a society where we would record all of our hours. And so generally, if we have a case, then the individuals, we have an individual who looks after all of our paperwork. And there's certain provincial, through the judicial system, protocols that have to be followed. So that individual who's on our committee spends the most hours in terms of on any particular case. So they have to be in every case, and so it can be, you know, 20 hours. If we've got a lot of cases, it can be 20 hours. Well, it can be even up to, say, 4 hours a week, so 20, maybe 16 to 20 hours a month. But because we are a small committee, our executive does everything. And so as an executive, I don't even keep track of hours, but it's a lot. It's a lot, just in terms of planning meetings, connecting, and maintaining connections with the RCMP, with the Crown, and yes, a lot of hours that don't always show for a lot. But yeah.
Well, no, thank you. Like, and I can understand, and having had some experience, smaller nonprofits and a passionate board and passionate members, you know, it doesn't feel like work, and so maybe you're not tracking it, but you know, thank you to all of your volunteers for the countless hours you actually do put in. And I mean, if you're making, like, as you said from your stats, you said, you know, 85% weren't reoffending. So obviously, you know, every time you have a connection, you're making a difference. So thank you for the work you're doing in that. And thank you for the update. It's great to hear from you again.
You're welcome. Thank you. We'll come back again and keep you in the loop of what we're doing and how we are doing. So I'm going to just pass this out. Now, how do I? Thank you very much.
Before you leave, hang on. Come on back.
Sorry.
Do you just want to repeat that date for your 25th
Yes.
for council?
It is Saturday, May 14th at Frank Wills Hall from 2:30 to 5 p.m. I do want to say one thing that we're very much appreciative of, and that is our growing. It's taken years actually to develop a strong relationship with the RCMP. But K-Division, just not that many years ago, just before COVID hit actually, mandated that all of the detachments in the province were to make referrals to youth justice committees. And so we have an excellent liaison, Constable Nathan Moore, on our committee. And so through the RCMP detachment in Cochrane, which has been excellent in their support these past couple of years, we are now looking forward to them doing the in-house training. We've sent them all the materials so they can train their staff now that they're having their meetings again in-house on making direct referrals. So we look forward to seeing more direct referral cases from them that would be a pre-charge.
Yeah, Constable Moore is fabulous. I know that he attends most of our schools out here in Cochrane and is a big advocate for keeping youth not only in line, but also being a positive influence when it comes to the influence of the RCMP. So that's great. I hope that I'm going to try to get out there. I know I have an appointment on the afternoon of the 14th, but I'll see if I can adjust my schedule to make sure that I can come down and cheerlead you guys on. And if
Wonderful.
I would encourage you also to reach out to our local media. I know I see one of them here.
Oh,
Please,
I did send an email, so, yeah, so hopefully, oh, and you got it. Oh, good.
yeah, please keep them updated as to all the
Yes.
good that you guys do, especially because when we sit around a table and if we don't know all the good things that you're doing, guaranteed the general public doesn't know as well. So please reach out to them to, kind of toot your horn when it needs to be done. And if you need anything from council that we can support other than your 25th, then please let us know.
I really appreciate that. Thank you very much for your support.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
And our last delegation for the evening is from Route 22 Collective Gallery, and I would like to call Ms. Lara Kruger, President of Route 22 Artists Collective Ltd., to the podium to begin her presentation. Hello.
Good evening, everyone. Honorable Mayor and Deputy Mayor and members of council, my fellow artists here and community members. This is the first time I've stood up in front of council, so I'm a little bit, nerves are a little bit shaky. Forgive me if I stumble over any words.
So are ours.
my
It's
best.
okay.
So I'm here tonight to represent Route 22, obviously. I'm the president of Route 22 Artists Collective. I know we have a lot of information to get through in 10 minutes, so I'll try to keep this as brief and to the point as I can out of respect for everyone's time. I also forwarded a copy of this presentation to Mr. Mayor and to everybody on council, so if you need to refer back to it, you should have a copy of that to refer to. So I'll just begin, first figure out how to get these slides to go forward. I'll just give you a little bit of context for where we're coming from as an organization and what sort of drove us to start this group. And really it comes back to, a fairly personal connection that I have to this town, and where we started from is pretty closely connected to where I started from, which is here in Cochrane. I was born and raised here. I went through all of the schools, the old original Cochrane schools, graduated from Cochrane High in 1999. So I've seen this town grow from, a community of 5,000 people to the way that it is now. And it's been quite a journey to see that happen over the years. I was really fortunate as a young person to have the influence of my uncle, Mac Mackenzie, who was an artist and the sculptor behind the Man of Vision, our town logo and symbol. So as a kid, I was able to be in his studio quite a bit, and he really had a big influence on my future love for creativity and for the arts. And really, that did inform a lot about my future decisions and my pursuit of the arts as an adult. So as a kid, I went to his home. He would host arts events and exhibitions with artists from across Canada because there were no venues, there were no exhibition opportunities in this town at that time. So he just turned his home into an exhibition grounds and a gallery. And so, that was great to see as a kid. So I graduated from high school. I moved out to the East Coast. I pursued post-secondary fine arts education. I came back to Banff and started a family there and started working in the arts, which, just is a little ways down the Bow Valley, but still part of the Bow Valley. And I worked in galleries. I moved into management of galleries. I sat on the public art board for the town of Banff for a period of time. So I got a really good inside look at how the arts inform a community and how they inform the economy of a community and the identity of a community. And so, that had a big impact. I came back then to Cochrane and settled here back to my rural roots. And it really struck me when I came back to Cochrane that the size of this town, we've grown enormously, but the arts and culture of this town have not really grown at the same pace and kept up with the growth of the town itself. So to me, it seemed that there was, quite a gap in the social fabric for Cochrane, for the arts and for culture. And, personally, that just was looking at it from, as an arts professional, there were very little opportunities for employment in the arts. As an artist, there were little opportunities for exhibition or for representation in galleries. Just really not much for opportunities for a creative person in this town. So I started talking to like-minded people, to the artists that I knew, and connected with some of the local arts groups, and we just started having conversations about how to change that. And it seemed like the timing was right because there was a lot of appetite for just all of the different arts groups that have existed for years but have not necessarily collaborated to come together and to form something that would give us a permanent presence in the town for the arts. So we have our vision, mission, and values, and we established those, and we got a really strong group of people behind us. And really, those same people have stuck through this whole last 3 years. Really, it's been about a 3-year journey so far, and that started just before COVID. We opened our doors for the gallery to the public just before COVID hit. And then we have managed to maintain that and struggled through COVID, and we're still here, and we had a very successful first year and a half, financially, all things considered. So that's just a little context of where we're coming from. The place that we have in the cultural environment, so I think this is just important for just general understanding, is that we're not an arts club, we're not an artist association. There are lots of arts clubs and associations around Cochrane and area. There is actually a very strong artist community. It just has never been really, brought together. And our scope and vision is bigger and broader in that we're trying to bring together the artists from the local region in a collaborative, permanent manner. And that's for the benefit of each other and for our community. So the work that we're doing really is necessary due to a current and a historical gap in a formal arts and culture mandate or a vision or funding from within the town. We're actively working to provide those year-round opportunities for artists. We have about 40 member artists, which we've had that number pretty much from the beginning, and it's stuck with us. We've lost a few for various reasons, and we've brought a few more on board, and we're growing that number all the time. So they do come from all of those different organizations that have been in existence around Cochrane for a number of years. We have collaborations in place with local arts businesses in Cochrane and Calgary. We have collaborations in the works with organizations like the Glenbow Ranch Park Foundation. We're putting together a plein air Art in the Park Festival in May with them. Stockman's Memorial Foundation in September. We have another event coming up, a Way Out West Festival in June, and then Cochrane Tourism and Cochrane Trade Show. We're involved with those organizations as well. So just a little brief overview of our organization. We have a board, obviously, which is a volunteer board. We have a gallery director who is employed by our organization, so we are providing employment in that area. We have a leadership team, which is all volunteer, program delivery volunteer team, which all of these people are actually practicing artists and established professionals in the arts realm. So we all do come from that hands-on sort of knowledge of what it is that we're passionate about. The technology that we have is really awesome. We've been fortunate to be sponsored by several different organizations and businesses. So Blue Pixel Media in town here has been fantastic. We do support him with ongoing paid support. He does our web maintenance and did our web design. We have Office 365 supported by Tri Global Solutions. We have Microsoft Nonprofit for Teams. So all of that really helped us through the pandemic with staying connected and just building our organization. Our corporate structure, just to give you a little look at that, it's a fairly standard structure, but it is all volunteer other than our gallery director. And then we have our members, artists, affiliates, and supporters down at the bottom that are the sort of the base of everything. The maturity that we have as an organization over the past couple of years, I think we're all quite proud to say that we have all of these pieces in place. There's been a huge amount of work put in by a fairly small number of people that have accomplished a lot in a short period of time. So we do have each of those pieces. I won't go through all of them, but all of the kind of key components to keep an organization running smoothly and to make sure that we have oversight over our finances and structures and processes. The target outcomes that we have, really, number one is to build a permanent hub for the arts in Cochrane. That's the main goal. And obviously we have a ways to go to get there. There's a lot of work to do. But we see that, building a strong relationship with the town of Cochrane is one really important piece. working towards stable and reliable funding for the arts within the annual town budget. That's another very important piece. Again, working with the town in an advisory or formal capacity to include the arts within the Cochrane community vision, the council priorities, and the formal town policy. That's a piece that, you know, having sat on a board in the town of Banff and done research about just the way that arts organizations function in other communities, that's, you know, that's a pretty key piece as well. And then, of course, just building our capacity as an organization to serve the community and just grow everything that we're doing. So currently, the challenge and the reason that we're here before you tonight is that we are currently operating a multidiscipline gallery and programming space, and we have a commercial leased space with a 3-year lease. And the commercial rates for lease space in Cochrane, as you all I'm sure are aware, are very high. So to finance that as a grassroots nonprofit, starting from, you know, zero, is quite a challenge. So our operating expenses this year are projected to be over $150,000. The lease rates and the general cost of doing business have increased exponentially this year and are projected to continue to increase. So we have united this local artist community to build and successfully operate an organization, a business, and a programming area during the most challenging market environment seen in most of the past few generations. And we have survived, but we do need some operational support in order to sustain it. The one challenge that we do face around that is that the operational funding and grants that many arts organizations have access to through their municipalities and through the larger arts funding bodies are not available to us yet, simply because either they don't exist within our municipality or they require 3 years plus proven financials. And so the Alberta Foundation for the Arts have some really great operating grants and grant streams, but you do have to get to that mark of having 3 or 4 years financials to access those. And we're not quite there yet. So how do other arts organizations and communities address these challenges? Because it's not obviously a challenge that's unique to us. Well, most similar sized municipalities have some operational funding in place within their annual budgets for the arts. The arts are recognized as a charitable sector by the CRA, and they often have revenue streams for grants, events, etc. as well. So a couple of examples that we've just put in here for comparison's sake are the town of Canmore, which has a similar sized budget and population base to Cochrane. And they have a fantastic arts facility called Arts Place, which the town does fund to the tune of $250,000 annually in operational funding. And they do also have a gallery space within their rec center with a 25-year lease in place for $1 a year with the town. They do pay for obviously their operational and utility, their utilities and their basic expenses, but they have a very, very strong relationship with their town when it comes to support for the arts. And having lived and worked there, you can see it in the town and you can feel it in the town, that there is a really strong presence for the arts, and it really does help to diversify and strengthen their economy. Okotoks also has a very good arts center, which is funded operationally by the town. It's actually run by the town. It was originally started by a nonprofit. And it does provide gallery and programming space alongside their visitors center, and it has a very similar operating structure to what we have at Route 22. So an example of support for the arts by a larger center would be Calgary this year. They're obviously a much bigger center, but they have recognized that because of COVID challenges, they're topping up their existing annual operational funding for arts groups to $25,000 per group above and beyond the annual operating funding that they generally provide. So they've added a further $1.4 million into their funding for arts groups this year. So that's just some examples of some of the ways that arts groups work with municipalities in other areas, other places. So our request to the town, really to ensure that our capacity is able to be adequate and to continue to operate and succeed in what we're doing, we are asking the town for $50,000 of short-term vital funding. And this number is something that we had established at the beginning of this year as our overall fundraising target. We did fundraise the last 2 years, and our fundraising targets were nowhere near that number. And the reason for the increase this year is because of our lease costs. That really is the big driver behind the need for increased funding. So we have been working towards sustainable funding since our beginning. All 3 years we've put in grant applications to every different kind of source that we can target and sort of direct our operations and our programming, aligned to all of those grants. So that includes the Cochrane Community Foundation, the Town of Cochrane, Rocky View County. We were really grateful to receive a grant from the Town of Cochrane last year for $2,500. We did receive a grant from Rocky View County as well. And we did have successful fundraising drives in both of those previous 2 years. We did also put in place, we've been working over the last year and a half to get a fiscal partnership in place. And originally we had thought that that would be best suited to having a fiscal partnership with the town. We did have meetings with the administration of the town, and we'd like to thank very much Mike Corman and Mitch Ham and Jaylene Knight for entering into conversation with us around all of this. And obviously we're on a learning curve. We're very much on a steep learning curve with all of this. So, we're trying to figure out where and how do these pieces fit in the best way possible for all parties concerned. And so we did reach out to the Calgary Foundation, the Totem Foundation. We had funds committed from both of those foundations that were fairly significant funds towards our next 2 years' operations. But those funds do depend on a fiscal partnership being in place. So when that was not possible with the Town of Cochrane, we're now back to the drawing board with finding another potential partner that would partner with us to access those funds. In the meantime, however, we've come to understand that our ask of the town and the relationship with the town really is simplest and most appropriate to just be a direct ask, rather than trying to establish some sort of a partnership agreement. And there's language around all of this that many people have different ideas about, and I'm not sure what the most appropriate language is, but basically this is our request to the town. So I can certainly answer questions about all of that. The response from the community and the contribution to community, we've had $90,000 in revenues over our first year, which we were very pleased and happy to see. The visitor count was over 2,500 people coming through the gallery in the first year, and many positive feedbacks and comments from them. We've had positive art program response and participation. We've had a returning visitor and client base, loyal volunteer and artist commitments, successful grant applications, and foundation business and individual funding support. We've developed strong collaborations with other community groups and businesses. The contribution that we make to the community, we align very much with the identified priorities by the town, such as services and spaces that achieve an improved sense of community, improved community engagement opportunities. We are providing both of those things. One of the outcomes that was a town budget priority was abundant and affordable recreation opportunities. So we are right now providing community arts programming and exhibits for all ages, and events such as the annual Art in the Park with Glenbow Ranch Provincial Park. We're providing seniors programming for the Big Hill Lodge seniors. And on top of that, we provide and support local employment, economic, cultural, and social diversification and growth. We enhance the culture, identity, and quality of life of our community, and we also attract and enhance tourism. So all of those things are of benefit to the community. Just a few comparable supports that we see in terms of supports provided by the town. We do have Cochrane Tourism, which is a nonprofit. There's space leased by the town within commercial space downtown for that organization to operate, and have now space allocated within a town facility, the new station. And then there's annual funding allocated within the budget for that nonprofit. There are community grants also to operations, towards operations of groups such as Humane Society, as we saw tonight, Boys and Girls Club, CHAP, Stockman's, and others. Just a case example of one of our community contributions is the senior support. One thing in the budget that we noticed was there was an elimination of a programmer position within the 2021 budget reductions. So we just wanted to, point out that we are currently running successful free of charge classes to seniors and providing the programming to them. So we're filling that need. The financial success and challenges. So just in a nutshell, the successes really are that we brought in significant revenues through a COVID year and as a brand new organization. We did receive some rental subsidy thanks to Randy Mavitt. We did receive some grants thanks to the town of Cochrane and Rocky View County. We did have balanced and complete financial statements. We've gotten our GST and CRA filings complete and balanced. Our fundraising campaigns have been successful, and the in-kind support that we've seen through volunteers and through other kinds of in-kind support, the value of which is over $120,000. So, we've had some significant in-kind support. The challenges for 2022 really are the rent increase. So that is going up to $43,000 this year, and then increasing further in 2023. So that's a typical, we're not an anomaly, that is a typical price for commercial space in Cochrane. And really the sustainability long-term of our organization comes down to all of those little pieces that you see in the arrow being in place, which we've actively been working on from the beginning. And we've got all of them in place to some extent, other than the support from the town. So that's what we're coming to you tonight to ask for. And it really does require all of those pieces in order for us to be sustainable. So just to recap, the request of the town for fiscal support we feel is necessary and appropriate to create and sustain a place for the arts in Cochrane. This support brings us in line with best practices for cultivating a strong cultural identity and providing access to an opportunity for the arts within a community. We would also like to offer our voice and expertise to a cultural advisory body within the town to help guide a broader arts and culture mandate and vision, and finally to be included in future town space considerations. Our work assists the town to achieve mutually beneficial community outcomes and to emerge from the pandemic as a stronger, more resilient and equitable and connected community for the future. So if there's questions, I would be happy to answer them. These are just some of the graphics for the events that are coming up that we are co-sponsoring or that we've collaborated with other organizations and groups on.
Thank you, Ms. Kruger. Just to remind council, so this is a non-decision based meeting so that we cannot make any decisions at this meeting. But obviously any comments from council will be taken forward and we will work with administration to bring back some additional information that we can all decide on. So I'm going to open it up to the floor right now. Councillor Reid.
Thank you for that presentation. I also appreciated getting it in advance. It was really thorough. So appreciate that my comment and questions are coming from a place of curiosity and a learning curve, as you say, and for me in particular through a financial lens. To be clear, I'm just trying to learn and appreciate fully your ask. So your reference to the fact that most similar sized communities to Cochrane have an operating funding for some kind of support in their annual budget for the arts. Your presentation and your focus is really on artists as opposed to the arts and community, if I understand it correctly. And so I took the liberty of, having had some time, to contact the 23 other medium-sized communities the size of Cochrane, and discovered that other than the references that you've made in terms of Canmore and Okotoks, there isn't, and I could be totally wrong about this, but in terms of responses, there isn't any of those communities that fund just artistic communities. They fund their arts and culture, and in fact, most of them indicated that that composed of creative endeavors, disciplines that included visual arts, literary arts, performance arts, and drama and music. So it was actually the whole arts community in its widest definition, not just an artist community, and none of them, other than the two that you referenced, funded an artistic collective gallery or an employee. And in fact, Okotoks, when I contacted them, theirs is actually a joint use facility and a beautiful visitor center. So that was my comment, just to kind of put your presentation in context for myself and perhaps other members of the council in terms of recognizing what like-sized communities actually do in terms of funding. But my first question was, I'm just trying to appreciate how the nature of your organization is fundamentally different from a club or an artist society.
Right.
When I did a quick Google search, which everybody uses Google, right, these days, I discovered that art societies were very much akin to the kind of mandate that you've identified in terms of your presentation, in terms of values, mission, and vision. So I was wondering if you pardon the pun, if you could add a little color to this canvas for me about what the difference is in your mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So the difference really is that the vision that we have is to bring together all of those different groups and organizations that already exist to create a hub and a permanent presence for the arts in Cochrane. So it's not, you referenced that we're serving artists rather than the arts. And I would counter that with that we are involving all of the existing artists in order to try to build a broader arts base for the community and for the general area. And that doesn't strictly mean just visual artists. At this point, we've begun with what there is in place right now for arts groups in the area in Cochrane. Primarily they're visual arts groups. And we've expanded our definition at the moment for our organization, or the definition permanently, I shouldn't say for the moment, is that we encompass all of those different disciplines of the arts. So we're a multidisciplinary gallery and programming space. So we are, looking to include the full spectrum of the arts.
By spectrum, you meaning literally visual arts of
At this point,
sorts.
visual arts, yes.
Yeah, but not music, drama, literature, so on.
Not right at this moment, no,
Yeah.
because really, to be honest, we had to start with something
Somewhere,
that was
yeah.
manageable and grow from there.
Okay.
So, yes.
And I
hope
had
that
another
answers.
question, but this one actually is for Mitch and Mike. I'm just wondering why the basis for recommending the Route 22 change is asked from the original request to where they're at today. I'm just trying to understand what your rationale was, or what the thinking was, what the basis was for that recommendation. This is to Mike.
Through the chair to Councilor Reid, the joint venture partnership that was proposed based on the CRA rules doesn't work for the town, so we couldn't provide them with what they needed as far as a charitable receipt. And maybe Ms. Campima can provide more information on that specifically, but we didn't ask them to do something on our behalf, so we couldn't provide them with a charitable receipt. They asked us to bring their program on board with the town, and that's not how it works. So if I can turn it over.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Corman. I actually have it up here, Canada Revenue Agency. When it comes to joint ventures and issuing charitable donation receipts, it requires that the issuer is an active partner exercising a degree of control that is at least proportionate to the resources it provides in the venture. So given that, we couldn't just enter into a joint venture in name only. We actually had to be an active participant and an active director of the activities of the joint venture. And that really wasn't falling in line with what Route 22 had in mind. So therefore, we weren't able to just jump onto that request. Hence, we had encouraged them to look for other alternatives.
Yeah, and I guess my experience would be that I think it was the right decision. I think you're better off as a nonprofit because you have the CRA status in terms of being able to issue receipts, and it's a far better opportunity for you as an organization, as a nonprofit. There's so much more that you're eligible for that you might otherwise not be able to have if you were connected with the town. So I think it was the right call. Thank you again for your presentation.
Yeah.
Mayor Janung?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your presentation tonight. A lot of information in there, and as you have alluded to, the story of arts and culture in Cochrane is a long one, steeped in obviously like your uncle, very successful, passionate artists, and really cool arts community that we have in Cochrane. And I guess the history lesson, and some of us have been around long enough, but we did have an arts and culture advisory committee at times. We've had groups come together and fall apart and come together and rally around building facilities and having bricks and mortar in place to celebrate exactly what you're here asking for tonight. So this is not a new story, and it's not a new ask. I mean, you framed it in a new way, and I appreciate the way that you're presenting it tonight. Few of my questions have been answered already, but the one I think Councillor Reid was referencing, and where my mind goes to financially funding I guess that's what financially is. So directly funding an organization, I guess one of the questions I would have is it a standalone group, or are you a broad base? And I think you've answered that this is not an exclusive club. It is an inclusive opportunity for all artists to participate in.
Yes, yeah, and we have actively sought all of the different arts groups to be involved with this right from the very beginning. And I think you can see in our membership that we've been successful in that. We have representation from all of those different groups. So, you know, it is very much intended to be an inclusive, collaborative organization that brings all of those people and pieces together.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And that was a check mark. I got that from Councillor Reid's question. Advisory committee, I really like that idea of, you know, often we talk about art. We have an arts endowment fund. I'm not sure what's in there at the moment, but in the past we have referenced and tried to encourage the arts. And I would see an advisory committee as an asset to help us, guide us for making those decisions. So I appreciate that you're not just here asking, you're here also to lend a hand and contribute. So thank you for that. Yeah. Also, I agree in inclusion in future building. So keeping your group or groups like yours in front of mind as we contemplate new structures in the community. So the transit and crossing building would be a good example of how we could incorporate public art space, etc., inside the building and even outside on the grounds. Yeah. I think we're aligned there. Another question I would have, and I guess I'm steering my questioning in a line here, and that is, again, to agree to funding, for me, would have to be something that most of the community could access. Right. So programming space was something you referenced in other communities and how they fund their arts community. Yeah. Can you maybe talk a little bit more about the programming that you offered? You said seniors and kids. Yep, absolutely. We're building, we're actively building the programming as we speak. But as of now, so just to give you a sense of the physical space that we have, half of it is the gallery space and multidiscipline gallery area, and half of that space is a programming space. So we have it set up, as a place of use for classes. And so we right now are running the seniors classes with Big Hill Lodge on a bi-weekly basis. We've just started some figure drawing classes, which are open to all ages, well, not all ages, sorry, 18 plus. And then we've had workshops. We're planning the events coming up for those spaces to be used. So there's a live art auction as part of that Glenbow Ranch weekend that will use some of that programming space. And we would like to start offering camps and programming for kids and youth over the spring and summer coming up. So we do have members that are teachers and professionals that can offer that programming. So that's all part of the mandate that we have had from the beginning, and we're just getting all of that actively in place right now. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Another question, you talked about you had close to 90,000 in revenue in year one.
Yeah.
How is that revenue generated? Do artists have to pay to
Yeah, I can break that down a little bit. So there's a membership fee for anyone that wants to be a member of the gallery, or of the collective, I should say. And those membership fees go directly to the organization. We are a nonprofit, so there's also display fees. So we have established a scale of fees that account for artists paying for the space that they are using for displaying their work. And then we have a commission as well, where we take 25% from artists, and that goes back into the organization as well. The programming area, we also rent that out and allow other groups and community organizations to use that space, and that's on a paid basis. So we generate revenue from that programming area as well. So yeah, art sales, the sales of the art, and then the membership fees, the display fees, and the programming area, those all bring in revenues.
Awesome.
Yeah.
This won't be news to council, but I've long been an advocate for, as community groups come forward and apply for funding, that we build in some sort of mechanism for self-sustainability.
Yeah.
I think the Humane Society tonight was a good example. I think Councillor McFadden referenced where they came from, this Atco trailer. And
yeah, I adopted a dog from that trailer. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and I think they're a good news story of how the town can fund something and they can slowly spread their wings and fly on their own eventually. Mm-hmm. So that's something I think we should bake into our funding. So my question here is, you're asking for $50,000 this evening. Is that a one-time ask in your mind? You did reference operational funding in the future.
Yeah.
Do you see that as one and done, or could we graduate that down over 3 years, 5 years?
Yeah, I mean, ideally, I think from our perspective, having something over a 2 or 3 year window to understand sort of what can be expected and what to work with over the next couple of years would be ideal. Obviously, we're going to be actively fundraising and looking for bringing in funds over the next, the future in general to become sustainable. So the goal is to become a lot more self-sufficient as time goes on. I think that it needs to be said that I think the funding piece for the arts in general, whether it's visual arts or whether it's broader arts, I think that is an important piece to put in place, and not to say that this organization should be the recipients of that allocation, but just I think that is something that is a necessary piece for long-term thinking, and so how we fit into that, I'm not sure exactly, but I do know that yes, for the next couple of years we're in a pinch for sure. And I think that as we move forward, and if we can find some solutions within town spaces, that would alleviate a lot of that crunch. But we do have some significant commitments from the Totem Foundation, the Calgary Foundation. It just depends on us finding a partner, and I think we can do that with another charitable group. So that will help as well.
Okay, and I guess my last comment is a comment and not a question, but you made reference to our vision in your presentation, which I thought was appropriate, because we're often finding ourselves talking about our culture, our heritage, our community, and our roots, and we leverage that, we use it, but yet we hardly fund it. We hardly have a place for it. So, and I mean, that's part of that long story of how we've gotten here, but we can't fix the past, but maybe we can learn from it and do better in the future. I'd like to see this come back in our budget somehow. I know tonight's not a decision making, but I would like to have this discussion as part of an ongoing budget discussion. But also, this format of committee of the whole is somewhat new. To ask administration to bring it to another council meeting would be something that I'd like to have a future discussion on, so we can make a decision.
Well, I would appreciate that very much, yeah. And obviously we appreciate the support, and we look forward to more conversation around it, and appreciate just having the opportunity to present tonight and let you know what it is that we're about and what we hope to do. Thank you. So, thank you.
Councillor McFadden?
Yes, thank you, and thank you, Laura, for your presentation. I have to say that the Route 22 gallery has become one of those things that I take visitors to.
Awesome.
And I love McKay's as well, but McKay's is a summer visit. Your guys' I can kind of go all year. But what I really appreciate about Route 22 is that it's been an innovative solution to how do we take that first step of celebrating Cochrane's arts and culture. And as the mayor referenced, it's kind of been a start-stop thing for a long time.
Yeah.
And we haven't managed to really get traction. And so what I've been admiring about your group's initiative is you're trying to find a unique way to do things. And this is the first time you've asked really for municipal support. And so I really agree with where the mayor's coming from. I'd like us as a council to have a further discussion around this to what can be done. As I think it's an important part of our community, and we have such amazing artists that really, we should celebrate. And like you said, your uncle's statue is a defining part of our culture and of what people know about Cochrane, right? So that's why, art is so important to really who a community really is.
It is,
and
yeah.
so I'd like to build on that and maybe step up and finally kind of see if we can help provide some momentum if you're kind of losing a little bit. And I certainly understand, having been in the fundraising and nonprofit world myself, the need to have sustainable funding to plan from. And so my question actually, so you've done some really great groundwork, you've got committed grants from, I think you said both the Calgary Foundation and from the Totem Foundation.
Yeah.
And the trick to activate those is they need to be matching somewhere.
They need to have a fiscal partnership
Right.
piece, yes.
You need to have that other piece.
Yeah.
And so the trick, I think, is our normal process would be we would take your ask and build it into the 2023 budget,
Right.
which is 8 months away from now. And whether those grant monies would still be available 8 months out, I don't know. I don't know if your funders would be willing to hold it that long, or if you need an answer sooner than that. And of course, as you're looking ahead to your leasing agreements,
Yeah.
that's a long time to wait.
It is.
And so that would be one of my questions that we have amongst ourselves is there something we can do, outside of the 2023, budget process? And so you come to us at an awkward point in our decision-making is, we
Yeah.
map out how we spend money in the budget process, and
Yes.
that's October.
I understand that, and I mean, that's part of the reason we started conversation early last year, hoping to sort of work in with those discussions, but the timing just wasn't quite right, and so now, we're where we are in the year, and yeah, it's going to be a challenge for us to see through to the end of this year if we don't get some sort of significant funding piece in place through the various different ways that we're exploring.
And so, and the driving need to find this is just the inflationary costs or rising lease costs.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's what's really been the change since
Exactly.
last year.
Yeah, it is.
Excellent. Yeah, so obviously we don't have any solutions tonight, but
that's
I
okay.
really hope that council, we have a further conversation about how we could, find a way to, keep this initiative going and help you build momentum. And as the mayor highlighted, one of the things I think this group has always been good about is wanting to support in the short term, but also with the understanding that, we'll help you walk, we want you to run by yourself.
Yes. Yeah,
So-
and we very much want that as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
Excellent. So anyway, I think I want to say that Councilor Reid asked some really strong financial points, and
Yep.
the mayor kind of highlighted where we're at. But I think what you and your group bring to the table is really valuable to our community, and I think it's worth a further discussion of council to see how we can help that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
You.
Before you run away, I just want to say a couple things. First of all, I know that the art community probably feels somewhat left behind when it comes to the broader organizations of our town. Part of it is we have some amazing artists within our community in all walks of life, and it's certainly not council's role to not support those artists. We do, it's just we're lagging and still having discussions of what that long vision or long-term vision looks like when it comes to supporting our arts. And obviously we're a multifaceted community where we want to support everything from sports to arts to theater to everything, right?
Yep.
I think the biggest thing that I would have to go back to administration is to figure out what that impact looks like if we were to fund early. Where is the exact funding actually going to come from? And then also measurables, like, certainly I don't want to say that we're not willing to support organizations, but obviously we need to have some measurables in that conversation, I think, in the background to figure out what measurables would need to be met by the organization to keep this a part of a long-term conversation, I think. So really, I think that's kind of my biggest thing, is to go back to administration, as long as administration has enough to kind of go forward, and maybe to possibly bring back a report as to what the financial impact would be if we fund early, what that financial impact would be to your organization if we delay and we wait to 2023 budget discussion, kind of like what Councillor McFadden said, maybe it's too late then. But I think all those things are great points that we would obviously like to hear in the future. And so if administration feels that's okay, then I think that will be our direction going forward.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor. If I may, I think based on the conversation we've heard, it would be appropriate for administration to follow this up with an initial report that can add some context and keep the conversation moving forward.
Perfect. Please thank all the local artists out there that you're involved with. Keep going, because obviously we know, kind of like Councillor Reid said, it adds a lot of color to our lives, so we don't want to discourage that at all. So thank you very much for tonight.
Thank you, and we would love to invite everyone, obviously, to come to the gallery and come and check it out at any time. I'd love to give you a tour personally, but
That would be
yes,
great.
see what we're doing. Come and check it out. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And council, I think we will take a 10-minute break. I feel generous tonight to let you all go to the bathroom, so we'll be back here at 7:20.
You're over 2 minutes.
All right, everybody, I'm going to welcome us back. We are live at 7:22, and we're going to proceed with our business category, which is 5A, the capital project update. And obviously, Mr. Hyman is up here at the podium, so I will let you take the lead.
Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to first start. Ms. Dela Cruz is unavailable this evening. She was very much looking forward to this. This was to follow up the presentation, or excuse me, the tour that you did on April 1st of our major capital projects. But this is a little bit more of the detail, and she was hoping to be here, but she does send her regrets, and I will be proceeding with the presentation on her behalf. All right, and I'm just going to follow up because there was a lot of detail that she wanted to provide here. But essentially, the main focus is to provide an update on the completed projects in 2021, the upcoming projects for 2022, and then certainly with our newly formed group of the engineering and asset management section was an opportunity to highlight some of the great work that this team is doing and the focus for that group moving forward. But before, one of the things that Pinky really wanted to focus on is to acknowledge the great work of the managers that she has within this section. That's Greg Barcy, Ray Predica, and Ryan Stewart, and their teams and their colleagues across the organization who have worked hard and collaboratively to support and advance these projects. These capital projects are critical in helping ensure Council's priorities are achieved for the benefit of our communities and organization. So it's really important that quality outcome for these projects are achieved on a consistent basis. So the agenda for this evening, as I mentioned, the 2021 projects, 2022 projects that are underway, and then something that certainly I think you will be interested in is other capital improvement efforts for capital projects that Ms. Dela Cruz has been focused on. And then of course at the end there'll be an opportunity for questions. So for 2021, the Highway 1A Centre Ave Phase 1, so really the expansion of Highway 1A from 2 to 4 lanes east of Centre Ave to west of 3rd Avenue, as well as on Centre Ave, the 2 northbound lanes and 2 southbound lanes between Highway 1A and 2nd Street, as well as the design of the retaining wall on 4th Avenue that we'll discuss here shortly. So the total budget for Phase 1 and 2 was $28.7 million. In 2021, the $9.2 million was spent. You may recall there was, and Councillor Reid did ask this question earlier in a number of months ago, where there was that hump within the area that wasn't completed, and so there was some utilities in that area, and that work is now commenced to correct that issue. Some of the other capital projects that were completed in 2021 included a new storage facility for the Bow Valley Rugby Club that's going to be leased. So there was the repairs to the back shop bay floor where fleet vehicles are maintained at the operations shop. So there's a picture on the left showing the storage facility, the before and after of the back shop bay and drain repairs, as well as the salt and sand storage facility that our teams worked on. There was also the expansion of the records vault for the storage of sensitive documents and materials at the ranch house, and all these projects came below the budget allocated. Of course, fleet, with a growing community, growing staff, fleet is an important aspect of this as well. In 2021, we completed the purchase of 4 vehicle replacements and 3 new vehicles to accommodate new requirements and growth, corporate properties and fleet and operations team through the collaboration with the rural municipalities of Alberta, RMA, were able to successfully acquire these vehicles within the budget, despite some of the challenges with the pandemic and the associated global supply chain issues. There were also a number of other capital projects advanced in 2021. This is just a brief summary of some of them. So there's the stormwater redevelopment conceptual design for historic downtown and the east end. And really this is intended to address stormwater capacity and levels of service in the historic downtown and the east end. This redevelopment plan will be further advanced this year, and the development of the 30% preliminary design to provide a better understanding of the costs and feasibility of these projects. The completion of the River Heights Reservoir preliminary design was completed in December of 2020, and this informed the offsite levy bylaw and the front-ending policies that was adopted by Council this past July. We have had previous discussions about Township Road 262 and completing the preliminary design. So of course this is the important road network with the closure of Range Road 43 and the Horse Creek Sports Park, as well as Heritage Hills community. So we have completed that. And then of course we are working on the water supply and servicing strategy, and as a way of an update, Ms. Dela Cruz will be before the Committee of the Whole in June, I believe June 20th, to provide you an update. That date had been moved from June 6th, and the only reason for the move was we will be proceeding with the public hearing on June 6th for an application in Glen Eagles. So 2022 major capital projects. Of course, phase 2 of the Highway 1A improvements. This includes the second half and will really dovetail into the work that the province is doing, and is the expansion of 2 to 4 lanes from west of 3rd to 6th Avenue, the 2 northbound lanes and 2 southbound lanes between Center Street and Powell Street, and the construction of the retaining wall. I have a visual here to share with you here shortly. The target completion is October of this year, and budget of $11.4 million, which we previously discussed with you. So here is just a rendering of the artist rendering of the 4th Avenue retaining wall facing west on Highway 1A. This is a concrete retaining wall, significant in size. At its highest point, it's about 9 meters. To prevent any vandalism, such as graffiti, the lowest 2 meters of the wall will be done with a textured concrete treatment that will prevent any paint or damage on this. The upper portion of the retaining wall will be enhanced with a textured treatment, and this is for further discussion. Here are some examples of some of the different treatments that are available for the upper wall surface. So these are cast in place concrete panels that could be provided on the upper portion, and they're just simply examples for Council's consideration. There's definitely ways to make this wall more attractive while staying within the budget allocated for this project. The project team will work with the supplier to come up with the options, and a report will be presented to Council later this year to obtain Council's feedback and input and endorsement before any of the formal finishing on that wall will be completed. Of course, the Highway 1A 22 utility relocation is an important project for our community, as well as it relates to the Highway 22 1A interchange. So a lot of this preliminary work, as you saw on your tour on April 1st, was completed on the west side of Highway 22. Some of the work on the east side has begun this year. Of course, this is to move or relocate the underground water and sanitary pipes that service Sunset Ridge. We're really proceeding with much of this project to allow for the advancement of the interchange, which we believe is going to be tendered later this year. And the project, or the budget for this project is $7.6 million and is on track to complete on time and on budget. So the station and Cochrane Crossing, on your April 1st tour, you had an opportunity to go and see this this development, something of a showcase for our community and a really important connection to provide a connection between the historic downtown and the quarry. So the station is going to house the Business Startup Center, Cochrane's Information Center, administrative space, public washrooms, and the transit waiting amenity. There's also going to be the Town Plaza, which will include monuments, secure bike storage, and future public art installations. The crossing will allow pedestrian access from the town site to the provincial site on the north side of the tracks. Will also be delivered as part of this project. There are some of the renderings of some of the additions and the wayfinding that will be included in terms of and really complement the existing work that has, you know, and the character of our community. This project is target completion is September 2022. Total budget $8 million. To date, or in 2021, we had spent $4 million. We had additional budget in the last budget for the completion of the monuments, and that was just under $700,000. The project is on track to be on time and on budget. Here are some pictures, the renderings, and of course how this project is progressing. This picture is from March and some from earlier in February, and of course it has advanced since these pictures were last taken, but again, we are confident that this is going to be a welcome addition to our community and a focal point and community gathering space in the future. Another important project, obviously, is our Protective Services building. Ms. Lowe is leading this project and has presented to you in the past on this, but I wanted to take an opportunity to just provide some highlights. You did see this on April 1st, but obviously it is a large structure. It's going to accommodate the RCMP, victim services, and the town's municipal enforcement staff. It is, the target completion is July 2023. So next summer, total budget is $27.7 million, and to date, $12 million has been spent on this project. Here are some of the renderings and the photos. Of course, you were there on April 1st, so you have seen and been through this space and are very familiar with the need for this in our community. One of the other important projects is the 4th Avenue Bridge replacement. The existing timber structure is 69 years old and well beyond its service life. So the bridge will be replaced with a steel and concrete deck that will have an expected life service of 50 to 60 years. In terms of the project team is working hard within the budget approved by council for this project, and target completion is this September. Here's some pictures of that existing bridge. Of course, it's within a environmentally sensitive area, so additional erosion and sediment controls will be required, and we're going to do our best to have the least disruption to the public while we're proceeding with this project. So there are also some Bow River flood recovery and erosion control projects that are proceeding. These are known as the FREC projects. So as you recall, in 2013, the flood damaged West Terrace Pond adjacent to the water treatment facility. There's a need to upgrade and expand the West Terrace Storm Pond, and an engineered stormwater wetland. This will also include the rerouting the backwash from the water treatment plant to the Bow River. So the target substantial completion is November of 2022, and the budget is $2.2 million, which is coming from a provincial grant for this project. Here are some pictures. The photo on the left is the existing pond. On the right-hand side is a existing wooden bridge. Will be replaced with a larger bridge. Will be able to accommodate maintenance and emergency vehicles when required. So the other FREC project from the 2013 is Jumping Pound. There was significant erosion along the banks of the Jumping Pound Creek. So we're envisioning restoring the bank and providing flood protection and erosion prevention. Again, that is targeted for this fall and is a budget of $1.2 million from provincial grants. This provides a little bit more detail. As part of this project, around 175 meters of pathway will be removed, and a new trail will be aligned further to the west of the Jumping Pound Creek for improved protection from erosion and flooding and providing enhanced connectivity. To take advantage of this project in this area, the Crawford Ranch community, to achieve cost efficiencies, we will also complete the dredging of the accumulated sediments in the Crawford Pond and the new plantings around the pond for aesthetics and improved erosion control around the stormwater pond. This piece of the project is funded through the Stormwater Reserve Fund as well. So for 2022 fleet, obviously we continue to grow and have a number of different replacement vehicles and new vehicles. So there is the acquisition of 7 replacement vehicles and 5 new vehicles that will be added to our portfolio to support growth within our communities. We would note that supply chain issues are still posing a number of challenges for us, but we're continuing to work with the trade and procurement colleagues at the RMA, and they'll be crucial in helping us deliver these projects on time and on budget. I think this was the part that I was referring to that council would be particularly interested in. I know Ms. Dela Cruz prides herself on this work, and as she is continuing to build the engineering and asset management group. So she is looking at a review and continuous improvement of project management practices. She is going to review and update the next 3-year capital budget, including the intake process. And I was also planning to update the next 10-year capital plan and really looking at resource planning for the next 3 to 5 years as she builds this group and provides the outcomes that certainly we were looking for in the revisioning of our organization. So just to wrap things up and then get to your questions, it's going to be a very busy year for capital projects. There's around $60 million worth of projects already underway or to be initiated. And the cost of construction materials and disruptions in supply chain are causing unique industry challenges. It's not something that certainly Cochrane is not immune to, but strong collaboration between staff and contractors is critical to project delivery and success. I think our project teams have done a great job to navigate this, but certainly we have to remain vigilant and committed to this as we continue to work towards delivering these projects in 2022. That concludes the presentation. Thank you for your time. Look forward to any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hyman, for the information, and a big thanks goes out to Ms. Dela Cruz for obviously providing you with all that information to give to us. So I'll open it up for questions. Councillor Reid, you are up first.
Yeah, I'm going to say I really appreciated the detail that was provided in the report. you know, the thing that, for me at least, and maybe this is a flash of blinding obvious, but there is so much that actually has been accomplished by your team and the rest of the administration. So I'd like to just compliment you and your team and the administration for all that's been, that we've achieved. I guess as a counselor, you recognize these pieces individually, but to actually then see them in a full report as a package is just, it's just a wow. I had a couple of questions in addition to that comment. Can you remind me what the value was, or why it's a need to be able to do with something with the Township Road 262? Why is that a priority? Or just remind me again.
Certainly, through the chair to Councillor Reid. So 262, and unfortunately I don't have a map, but it's right at the north end of Heritage Hills. So with the closure of Range Road 43, which is directly across from Ranch Road, so we're anticipating that closure as part of the highway project. There is a great deal of traffic that utilizes that intersection now. So we felt it was important because a lot of that traffic will be rerouted one of two ways. Some of it will go directly north to Cochrane Lake and then come in from the north, or alternatively, what we're very concerned about is traffic continuing on to Horse Creek Road on Highway 1A, and then going to Township Road 262, which is currently a gravel standard, and then just the volume of traffic that's currently a gravel road. We felt it would be important to have that design complete and certainly ready to proceed with construction if, again, funding is an issue, because we wanted to work with the province and recognize this, but we also want the interchange project to proceed. So that's really the rationale for having that ready, is being in a position to be proactive, not reactive.
So basically, it's just preliminary planning or analysis and preparation for what might then come, right?
Correct, and I don't mean to give too much detail in terms of a response, but there's also significant development proposed in Rocky View County at Cochrane Lake. So a lot of that traffic is anticipated to be directed here as well. So there is going to be opportunities for intermunicipal collaboration on this as well. So we wanted to just have that design ready, so if we need to respond, we can.
Yeah, I think that's really important to emphasize that municipal collaboration in relation to our neighbors of Rockview County. Likewise, a resident had asked me about the 4th Avenue Bridge and wondering why that couldn't be a pedestrian bridge. I indicated that there is a resident that lives on the north side of that bridge. Is that resident a part of the Cochrane town, or is that a Rocky View resident?
I believe it is a Rocky View resident. However, the first part of the question is that's also emergency access,
right?
For Sunset. So again, we can't just have that as a pedestrian bridge only. So there's a couple of different things.
Yeah, so it's an emergency access to Sunset or from Sunset, depending on whatever the emergency might be. And that's why it couldn't be a pedestrian bridge or a single lane bridge, right?
Correct.
Okay, good. And then well, I have a question and a comment. The last question was about, well, I know it's not in our jurisdiction and is maybe not something you know of, but with the mayor's recent video on the 22-1A, which was both informative and entertaining, by the way. I've had a number of residents ask me, when would the 1A 22 project be completed? And I've basically said it depended on when it would start. But is there any ballpark, like is it a 2-year project or a 3-year project, or?
I can provide an update on that. They're anticipating later this year for the formal tendering of that project, and then the completion that is in the agreements that we've worked with Alberta Transportation on is June 30th, 2025. It would be complete. So
Okay, and then the last comment I had was the section, and again, the pages are unnumbered, but the section that says other improvement efforts, the capital project management system, all the copy underneath that it was really encouraging as to where we're going in terms of the future. And I think in many ways it lends itself back, for me, to the council support and approval of additional staff and support in relation to the organization as a whole. But this clearly shows that we're planning for the future. We're not just, this is not something on the corner of someone's desk or something that might get possibly done. This is actually planning, and I think in many ways it'll be beneficial to us both in an efficient and effective way in terms of the years to come. So I was really pleased with that section of the report, so thank you.
Happy to have that included. I certainly know that it is a passion of Ms. Dela Cruz to include that. I would also say with the vision that the organization and Mr. Derricott, that is what we are building. We're trying to build an organization to respond. If you look for 2022, $60 million of projects, we need a solid team. We believe we're building that team to continue to deliver that projects now and in the future. So that's what it's all about.
Yeah, thank you.
Mayor Genung?
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Reid took most of my comments and questions, but I do think it's important that we do stop and reflect on 2021 and for the reasons that you outlined, not just to pat ourselves on the back, but also to thank administration and all the staff that actually produced that this report, right? But also just to see, as we set priorities, that this is the outcome of them. So it's, I appreciate this, again, the detail and the reflection point of 2021. Couple of questions I have just in relation to a couple of the projects. One on the bridge replacement at 4th Avenue. Councillor Reid touched on one, that it is an emergency access to and for Sunset. But will that be like and maybe this is too detailed as I don't think you've tendered it yet.
We have tendered, I was speaking with the operations manager. He was looking through some of the responses today, so very early in that process. But again, if we're going to deliver this on the September timeline, yeah, we've got to get moving on it. So,
well, and my question is there going to be a detour with that one resident? Is it a remove in one day and put like pre-built bridge?
I believe it will definitely be a staged process because we do have that residence. Obviously, communication is going to be critical. I'll have to get more information before I'm going to be able to answer that question.
Yeah,
I think it's
pretty
probably
detailed question about one that I don't. It's just it just came to mind. The second one, I've seen quite a bit of chatter around the amount of trees that we're removing for different projects, etc. The Jumping Pound Creek rehabilitation is one of those where I think there's some deadfall and some clearings, etc. In your report, I think it was referenced, but the town is going to replant, and there is a planting or reforestation right up the riparian area.
Absolutely, there's plantings as part of that project, and we understand the response that we receive anytime trees are removed, but there is a plan, and we're looking forward to planting some additional trees in that area.
Yeah, and by no means am I being critical. I understand those trees need to come down, and but yeah, I'm encouraged that and not surprised that we're replanting. So thank you for your report. Lots of good stuff on the way.
Thanks.
Councillor Wilson?
Thank you. Pretty lengthy list. I just happened to pick out a couple of ones that didn't get touched on, so we could discuss almost everything. One was when you come down the hill on the 1A highway, you called it phase 2, where the retaining wall is going up the hill. I took interest with that just as that's a real focal point of town as you enter our community, and I know we've talked about design elements there and how it'll look when it was done. Do we know a little bit more about timelines for we're going to design some sort of you called it a concrete finish there, I believe we had some options, so just wondering when that discussion would take place of, I don't know, design features there, and then just in general with the 1A project, there's a lot of work to do still, but at some point there's design elements at the end of it we're going to talk about, so if there's, just wondering if there's any updates there, or is that contingent on budget left over, or?
No, certainly it's within the budget currently, so we'll, let me just, I see this, just one second. We will be back in front of council. I can't confirm the exact date, Councillor Wilson, but certainly it's something that we very much will be looking for input from council on this. You know, we're working with communications with some of the the preliminary work that's going to be going on in this area and how we notify adjacent residents. but the precast concrete, a lot of this work can be done, and at a later date, some of these precast panels can be placed on there, so we don't have to make those decisions right now, but we will come back to council here shortly with some different options, and we will be looking for some input. We intended, though, the first 2 meters really to be that area that couldn't be impacted right now. We didn't want people spray painting, tagging, doing things on that area. So again, it will be that surface that's just the first 2 meters, but obviously it's a significant wall, and it really provides a unique opportunity because it is a focal point, as you pointed out, for our community.
Thank you. It certainly struck me in the artist rendering on the slide before. I don't know if that's actually how reality will look, but the main thing you see in that photo is a giant concrete wall. That's really quite the structure, so it'll be interesting to see.
And as I said in the presentation, the highest point is 9 meters, so
right.
that's a significant space, and it is a very wide structure as well.
Thank you. And then the other one that caught my attention here was the Jumping Pound Creek improvements. It's something that I don't think we've talked about in a public meeting at all before, or just maybe I've forgotten about it. Is that something that's going to take place this summer? I know it's a really popular area for Cochrane residents in the summertime. Is that going to impact creek enjoyment and just what the construction project will look like there? I also didn't understand, it says Jumping Pound, Crawford Pond, and that's different than the Jumping Pound Creek, I believe, and maybe I'm not familiar with that. But
so there was an opportunity with the funding, and if you look at the slide, you can see the entrance to Crawford Drive to Crawford Ranch, and so there's the stormwater pond, and that's the area that's going to be dredged and, of course, cleaned up. In terms of the realignment of the pathway into the area in the yellow to just ensure that there won't have future erosion. In terms of taking away from the enjoyment, I think there's enough other areas within Jumping Pound where, yes, there are going to be impacts because we're trying to get it finished by September, this September. So I can't say that people won't be impacted, Councillor Wilson, but certainly we'll do our best to communicate it effectively and provide other opportunities for people either further to the north on Jumping Pound Creek or in other locations.
great, thank you. Could you remind, is there a pathway on both sides of that creek? These are all questions that I just envision being flooded into my inbox come summertime. So is it the north side, or sorry, the west side there where the construction's happening, and then
Correct.
There's also a path on the east side that's not being impacted with construction, or I feel like I'm doing the same thing the mayor did and asking you some pretty detailed questions, but just curious.
I believe there is a pathway. It's been some time since I've been down there, but let me get back to that.
I was just going to say perhaps interested residents could go explore for themselves to find out if there is a path there. There's, as
I know further to the north there is.
Well, I was going to say, as Mr. Hyman suggested, is certainly, while this particular area may be impacted, many opportunities for people to still enjoy, their outdoor amenities, trails, et cetera, this summer. And the intent of these types of projects is to ensure that we can enjoy this for many generations, years to come. Unfortunately, we'll be disrupted a little bit this year.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. That area has changed so many times with multiple floods that I have trouble keeping track of how it looks in its current form. So thank you.
And I think, as Mr. Derricott's saying, with the alignment, I think we'll ensure that we have a pathway for a long time and generations to come, and people will be able to enjoy this space for a long time.
Thank you for the update.
I only have a couple questions. One is that I'm hoping that we can provide maybe, and I know that we have done this before, but maybe a public update to the public in regards to why the town has funded some of our GAP projects versus waiting on provincial funding, and us contributing towards those projects. I've gotten a few messages anyways about why is this not in the hands of the province versus why are we kind of jumpstarting it? And I think it might be a good reminder to remind the public as to why we are funding some of these things so that we can get these projects done and complete, and we're not back at the hands of the mercy of the provincial gods, right? So it might be a good thing to maybe re-update the public as to why that's happening. And then
If I can,
Sure.
and I apologies for interrupting Deputy Mayor Fedeko, but the trade show, of course, is this weekend. Capital projects is the focus, so there'll be lots of opportunity for residents to come this weekend and get lots of information, and certainly we'll work with our communications to share the strategy and I think the outcome with GAP 1, GAP 2, the work certainly of the mayor and intergovernmental relations to have some really positive outcomes for our community. Like that's, $22 million of investment that is coming to our community because of the efforts. And, residents need to understand that they will be able to be from Center Ave, by 2025 and go all the way through this intersection. It's a significant achievement, and we'd be happy to share more information on that.
yeah, that's right.
If I can add to that, sorry to jump in there as well. I think, one area of our website that I think is actually functioning really, really well is the capital projects piece, and I believe that there is some of that information still available there. So we can always direct residents to that information that exists currently on the capital projects portion of our website.
Yeah, I think that would be great. And then I only have one other question. I know you said Ms. Dela Cruz is going to come forward with kind of the 10-year capital plan, kind of maybe like another re-look at it. Are there any projects, now that she's kind of, been with the town for a little bit, that she's maybe analyzed or re-looked at to say, maybe we need to shift some projects? And I'm not maybe expecting that answer tonight, but obviously she's got her eye on all our projects that we have. Is there anything that could possibly be bumped or maybe said, maybe now is not the time to pursue?
Deputy Mayor Fedeko, I think that Ms. Dela Cruz is working very closely with Ms. Van Kaimpima as well, and myself, and we'll be looking at this. So certainly as we look forward to future budget, we'll be have some more updates with this. But again, this was the plan and the vision that we were talking about to support and be more strategic and more sophisticated in our approach to capital projects. So the short answer, and I'm giving a very long one, would be yes, we will be back.
Perfect. Yeah, there's no shortage of activity going on in the town right now, and I think we're all well aware of exactly how much we have going on. And you know what? Cochrane's going to look like a very different place in, say, 5 to 7 years from now. And I don't know what people are going to complain about, but I'm sure some people will find something to complain about, but it won't be traffic. I'll put it that way. Anyways, thank you for your presentation. I don't think council has any other questions, and I don't think we need to direct administration for anything else at this point.
Okay, thank you for your time. And as I said, Ms. Dela Cruz sends her regrets as she wasn't able to join us, but she is watching, so she'll look forward to providing you future updates and engaging you on a number of different important items. Thank you.
Our thanks goes out to her for the extensive work she did. So our next one up is 5B of our business category, which is property tax rates. And I'd like to ask Ms. Van Kemkemia to come up to the podium. Oh, you're already there, so I don't have to ask you to come up to present item 5B.
Great, thank you, Deputy Mayor Fedeko, members of council. I didn't prepare a fancy PowerPoint presentation. I'll save that for next week when I bring the actual tax rates, so I'm just going to yabber at you a bit. So in my report, it covers all the different points for consideration this evening. The purpose of bringing it to you is just to give you a little bit of a heads up on what we're looking for the different components of setting tax rates, which we'll do next week. And also to just get kind of a nod of heads or a shake of heads as far as the tax split goes, because that's what I use to figure out what rates to set or to recommend that we set. So just some things that are contained in the report, a bit of the highlights to let you know that when we prepared our budget for 2022, we anticipated that parcel growth, so the number of parcels that were new, that weren't in sort of our assessment pool in previous years, we anticipated that that would be a 2.5% growth. And it came in at 2.66%, which is in line with the report that Ms. Butt had given in January to council. And then the other part of our growth is what we call inflationary growth. So that's the growth in existing properties, their value or their assessed value. And so that for residential properties on average went up 8.73% and non-residential 1.66%. So as you can see, residential prices have increased significantly faster or higher than our non-residential properties. So speaking of assessments, we currently have, our appeal process, our assessment notices were sent out in January. Our appeal deadline for filing an appeal of your assessment was April 1st. Our team works with individual people, so we don't make everybody go to an appeal process. We try and work with them, have a conversation, provide information back and forth. But after doing all of that, we have 7 residential assessment appeals and 7 non-residential assessment appeals. The value of the taxes at risk, if all of those appeals were successful, is just over $64,000. There is money in the budget every year for uncollectible taxes, so we have budgeted for it, so it's not that we'd be coming back to council saying, you know, we need to cover off that shortfall. We do have every confidence in our team's work and that they will be able to successfully defend the assessments. However, we always make sure that we have a contingency amount in our budgets just in case. Another thing my report speaks to is the municipal price index. We've talked about this lots of times before. In 2021, the municipal price index increased by 2.61%, and the consumer price index is 1.5%. So the municipal price index is a municipal basket of goods, which is different than the consumer basket of goods that the CPI is based on. I did attach to your council package, or to your committee of the whole package, the latest MPI report from the City of Edmonton. It's interesting to note that in that report, they do a forecast for 2022, and they forecast MPI increase at 0.95%, CPI increase of 2%, and just if anyone's been following the economy, inflationary year over year increase so far to the end of March is 6.7%. So I'm thinking their forecasts are probably a little bit low. And just of note, you know, as all of us in the community and in the world are experiencing inflationary impacts on our budgets, that also influences and impacts the municipal budgets as well. And so just as the costs are increasing for your family, they're also increasing for our family in order to be able to provide services. The cost of those services are increasing, and that's evidenced by the municipal price index changes. Something else I've touched on in this report is the education requisition. So just to let you know, the province has not provided a final requisition amount. They don't anticipate that till later on this year. However, in the end, they have provided an interim requisition amount, and it's based on the same budget. However, it's, again, back to this pie analogy. Their pie is the same, but how they split it up is based on our assessments, and because Cochrane's assessments went up more than other areas in the province, the portion of our education tax pie has increased, and that's increased by $567,000 over last year. If it so happens that the requisition is higher or lower than their interim amount, then that's adjusted next year in the education tax rate that we set. So we wouldn't come back and adjust that after the tax notices are sent out this year. The Rocky View Foundation is another requisition, so that's to support our seniors' housing, and that requisition is up $3,600 over last year. Then something else of note in the report is the sort of the assessment split. So different than the tax split, the assessment split is what proportion of our total assessment is from residential properties and what percentage comes from our non-residential properties. So in 2021, assessment was 87.2% residential and 12.8% non-residential. Last year in 21, it was 88.5, 11.5. And in 2022, it's now 89.5 residential and 10.5 non-residential. So as you can see, our proportion of assessment that comes from our residential properties is increasing at a faster rate than our non-residential properties. Just something to be aware of. And then last but not least is the tax split. So the recommendation in the report is to have it stay as what it's been for the last 4 or 5 years, a split of 85% residential, 15% non-residential. I know that's a departure from previous times I've stood before you with recommendations on the tax split. There is a bunch of work to do, and I'm really looking forward to a discussion on the topic because there's different views on what that split should be and what are the principles behind that. And I think that the best time to have that discussion is part of setting a tax policy. I know we've done some work on what is some of the council's priorities in the coming year and what does that mean for administration. And one of the things I really want to be able to do is do some really quality work on setting financial and fiscal policies, and the tax policy is one of them. And that's where council sets out their philosophies and the principles. And then if we set that out in the policies, then when it comes this time next year, if we have that policy in place, we will have had our robust discussion, determine where council lands on a tax split, and then I would just bring my report to be in line with that. And that concludes my presentation this evening, but I certainly would welcome any questions that you have.
Thank you for the information. Councillor McFadden?
Yeah, thank you. Actually, you answered most of the questions that I had as you went through it. The one I did need clarification on, and I don't remember what it is. Can you refresh me on what the designated industrial property tax is? I know it's not significant, but it's just not one that I was remembering.
Yeah, so there are linear assessments and industrial properties in our municipality that the province does the assessment work on. So our team in-house does not assess those types of properties. That comes from the province, and then the province passes the bill along that it costs them to do those assessments on those properties. So then we set a tax rate to collect those from those specific properties.
Okay, and so what's an example of one of those in town? Is it like the pipeline right away? Is that?
Yeah, that type of stuff.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. I think your report kind of gave me a good overview of what our next discussion is going to be, so I look forward to that. So thank you very much.
Councillor Reid?
Yeah, you probably anticipated my question in terms of the tax split. Admittedly, I'm shocked that the recommendation you're bringing forward, given the conversations we've had in the past to this, and so I'm still not understanding the rationale for why keeping the same. I'm not arguing one way or the other. I'm just making the observation that you were pretty adamant about this in the past. We've had personal conversations outside of council meetings about it. And while I understand there's a philosophy behind that, and I appreciate that a tax policy should come forward, I'm just surprised by it. And having said that and vetted that spleen, I'm just wondering, when would that policy come forward? When do you see that? Like, when is that appropriate in terms of budget discussions and tax setting, and when does that happen?
Yeah, so a tax policy doesn't really impact the budget. So that's something that just needs to be in place before this time next year. So I'm anticipating in the next year, we'll be able to work on the tax policy. Again, it depends on capacity and resources. There's a reason why it hasn't come to this point. But the work plan is to make that a priority in the coming year. To sort of address the non-question at the beginning of your statement, the reason why I went with what we had recommended before, rather than making my argument again, and I'm calling him out, is Mr. Derricott and I disagree on the philosophy behind the tax split. And we're to the point where we've agreed to disagree, and we're going to both bring our points and our points of view to council and to have a fulsome discussion as part of setting the tax policy. So rather than entering into a heated or maybe not so heated debate with Mr. Derricott this evening, in a short period of time, I thought it would be better to actually have that fulsome discussion on the different principles when we set the tax policy. And for the purposes of 1 year, where council has been consistently doing 85-15, I thought that would probably be the prudent way to go this year.
I think that's a prudent answer. No, in all seriousness, I appreciate the transparency, and in many ways that says a lot about the culture of the organization, that you feel comfortable enough in a public forum to be able to say that you disagree with your boss, and that you two will bring your arguments, respective arguments, to council, and council can make that decision. And I'm glad that our organization is mature enough to be able to have that kind of frank conversation. But I appreciate your perspective to that, and I look forward to that discussion.
Thank you.
I think
May
we're all
I-
looking forward to it now.
It's gonna be great.
May I add to that too? Thank you. And Catherine and I have had some already of those robust conversations. And I think one other principle that I think I just want to highlight here as well is I think when we're approaching decision making is that we've talked about kind of avoiding trying to make decisions when the quote unquote gun is to our head. And so we wanted to divorce that from this moment as well, as in we have to pass the tax rate next week. And that doesn't necessarily lend itself to the best kind of decision-making process and discussion on what could be a very, very significant policy piece. And so that's just another element that we thought, okay, let's make it through this cycle, and then we'll add this conversation when we have more time and space to allow that to take place, I think, in a more fruitful way. So, and I also look forward to the conversation very much, so.
Councillor Nagle?
So the discussion that we're having on May 9th, is this about it says in here we're gonna have all 3 readings on May 9th. Is that about the broader policy of what we're gonna do with the tax split? Or that's just setting the, okay, because I was gonna ask if we could not try and do that all in one go, if we could have more of a fulsome conversation with possibly public hearings and not all 3 readings in one night. Okay, that was my question.
I only have one question, actually. When it came to the assessment questions, can you kind of give me an overview, like just a quick overview about, like, were people just flabbergasted as to how much their assessment went up? Were there certain, groups of issues flagged maybe as to what their assessments were? And I'm talking about the assessment complaints that you received. Could you kind of fill us in on what that looked like?
Well, there were a number of them that were surprised that it wasn't higher. Because if you recall or are aware, our market is growing exponentially. Houses are selling well over asking price. But our assessments are as at July 1st of 2021. So whatever the market was July 1st of 2021, but the assessment notices don't come out until January. So there's some discrepancy between the prices that people are seeing houses selling for in January compared to when our snapshot is in July. That was a lot of them. Some of them is information, perhaps the condition is different than what we have on file, simply because we don't go and enter everybody's house and take a look at the condition. So we might have it at a different condition level than what people actually have. We might have had some differences in square footage in our records, for example. So there's just a variety of reasons why people contact us, and if they can provide us with information to say, oh no, actually, see, it's this, then our team usually is really good at working with people and seeing if we can find a common understanding or a common agreement to what the number should be. And if we can't, then they agree to disagree and the appeals go ahead.
I imagine that we're probably anticipating that next year we might have more questions than what we had this year, especially with the cost of what things have gone up comparatively.
Yeah, Catherine, sorry, do you know offhand an approximate total parcel number? I think you said we had 14 appeals on how many parcels total?
There's about 13,000 parcels.
Yeah, so I think that's just an exceptionally efficient reflection of an assessment model that's working pretty functionally. I'm not so quick with the math, but is that 0.01%? That's pretty successful.
The other thing to be aware of is the province does audit our assessments before we finalize them. And so we have to be within a narrow tolerance. And the province does have the market data that we use to come up with our assessed values. And so they do an audit of our assessments, and we do pass those audits. And so that's also something that's taken into consideration. So it's not just our team deciding on a number. They really are basing it on data, and that data is checked by another body.
Yeah, I have to say that this year was probably one of the first years that I've seen in a while that I didn't read a bunch of complaints that people didn't seem to understand. And if there was, then actually other residents jumped in and said, whoa, you actually don't know what's happening. You should probably understand how they do assessment. So I think whatever we're doing is working in that regard. And I know that especially probably Councillor McFadden and I have had that conversation lots about how do we get that information across to residents, how do they understand their tax bills. But whatever we're doing, I think, is probably working somewhat, because some of those questions, I don't think I saw nearly as many of the levels of complaints that I have in past years. So kudos to the team and kudos to all those, because I know that I think you beefed up kind of maybe the hours to be able to help people or, you know, to service them if they did have questions. So I think all of that is really good.
We're also working with our communications team this year to make some changes to the pamphlet that goes into the tax notices when they go out towards the end of May. I think we're also looking at perhaps giving some educational videos access. So we're just trying to think of different ways that we can just continue with the civic literacy.
Yeah, which is great. Well, there's nothing obviously coming out of this meeting. I guess we will wait for the report to come forward at our next council meeting, and we'll go from there. So thank you for the information.
Thank you very much.
So before we go in camera, I just wanted to say one quick thing. It's going to be a very busy weekend here in Cochrane this weekend. There is a ton going on between trade shows and garage sales and Rogers hockey, obviously Rogers hometown hockey. So I just want to encourage people, stay in town, support local, you know, find your way to the Colt, find your way to the nearest bus stop, take, you know, carpool, whatever you need to do, support restaurants, just be out there and supporting Cochrane, because this is one great weekend to be able to do that. And obviously we all want a break from COVID. So it's a good opportunity. And with that, we need to go in camera. So I'm going to look for a motion to go in camera. Councillor Reid. Everybody call the question? And thank you very much, everybody. And that's it for tonight.